very good morning to everyone who has tuned into this podcast. So, this is MTACTIQ presented to you by School of Business and Management, Christ University. So, for today's session, we have Mr. NAVEEN LAKKUR, who is Chief Innovation Coach at Institute of Inspiring Innovation. Please, sir, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you so much.
Yes. So, should we start with the questions, sir?
Yes, sure.
So, sir, these questions are some questions that have been going on to the students' mind a lot since it is the placement season. So, my first question is, how does one find out, or how does one decide and evaluate if a job description is suitable for him?
Interesting question. How does one get to understand if the job description is suitable to them, right? I think the very first thing is for the person or the candidate here, right? For the student to understand themselves better, okay? To understand what are they looking for and what are they meant to be doing, right? So once with that clarity, I think you will be able to relate to the job description much better, right? Otherwise, it looks like every job fitting, but then only later you will see that it's like a round peg for a square hole, right? So there's a mismatch, right? The first step is to know ourselves better and our aspirations, our dream much better, and then I think it will automatically start becoming visible. The job and the fitment, you'll start seeing them.
Yes, sir,
The first step is that.
So I completely agree with you. Most of the things that students do nowadays is they will prepare the academics part. On paper they'll be the best person, but when it comes to selling themselves based on their skill set, that is where some students lacking.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Moving on to the next question. So there have been we discussed this question earlier also since we met. So there have been multiple instances when a company goes to a college for placements.
Okay.
And the job description provided there, the candidate is like, okay, I'll be able to do it. He's pretty confident.
Okay.
Then on the day of joining, he or she, the candidate, is burdened with responsibilities which were not earlier mentioned. So that is a position in which the person is instantly put out of the comfort zone.
Okay.
So how can a student tackle that, being a fresher and being given to the commitment?
Okay. One little additional data I would need here. Is it pre-placement or during that placement interview you're talking about, or after joining the company? So when is this realization happening?
This realization is happening on the first day of joining the company.
Joining the company. This is post when you signed up, but when you landed there, it's a very different expectation, and there's a mismatch, right? There's a mismatch of what you thought, what you signed up for, and the kind of role or responsibility that is coming in. Okay, so this is about handling the uncertainty, right? So in fact, you should be pretty clear. Having some flexibility is good. At the same time, if that is completely not what you signed up for, and you're very clear, very few percentage of students who are getting into job now shift in their student career or student life to the career, their professional space. 80% of them would not know what exactly is their vision and their dream is all about. It's opportunity based is where the majority would be flowing. Okay, so the 20% are very clear on what they want to be doing in life, right? And their purpose is known and so on. So that's the 80-20 rule. So the 20%, if it is not matching, if it is for them, if there is a mismatch, then you'll have to quickly assess whether what you want to be doing, is there such opportunities within the organization which you can over a period of time move and grow into. Then it's a matter of time, right? But you'll have to continue to own what you want to be doing and nurture that, and keep figuring out opportunity, right? Else it's better earlier than later that they will have to move on and find another one which is actually aligned to what they really want to be doing, right? And this happens with the 20%, all right, who are very clear on what their path, growth path is, and it's because of their purpose, aspiration. There is clarity in that, And 80%, when we move to the 80%, there it is more of the flexibility which is required at that point in time. That's fine, not what you really thought that you signed up for, but something else. But let me explore this. Let me get into this. Let me learn from this. So if that attitude, if they develop, then there's no issues, because then I mean, everything is new. So it's a first job. So there is scope for learning. I think the investment should be on the environment that you're signing up as much as what job description that you are excited about initially, and there is a mismatch or a little difference from what you originally signed up for. As far as the learning opportunity is there, I think the assessment criteria should be on: is there going to be a learning opportunity here, is there going to be growth opportunity here, and would the organization be willing to accept some ideas. It's more related to the culture and opportunities, right? So I that should be the assessment. For the 80%, that's what it is, and for the 20%, the action items are very different. Yeah.
So I completely agree with you. The paradigm shift that I observe between the previous generation, I would call maybe 4 or 5 years ago, someone who was passed out, and now is people have under the umbrella of various definitions, people have started to become more rigid. So, for example, this thing that you mentioned, someone they should have look for learning opportunities. But nowadays, there's also this unsaid rule in the industry. Please correct me if I'm wrong. That during your initial years, if you keep on changing too many jobs, you get termed as a hopper, and nobody likes to hire a hopper. So, if someone is in that situation where he or she cannot continue or perform their best,
Sure.
so should they take that jump, take the risk?
See, it's I mean, as an individual, my life is a lot more precious. My time is a lot more precious, right? Irrespective of the generation or gap, or the current trend or past or the future, either which way, we need to understand time is the most valuable resource. If I'm going to be working somewhere, and if I'm going to be spending my time there and my energy, if I'm not getting energized with the work that I'm doing, and if I can't contribute meaningfully, then no point in being there. And just because there is a job doesn't mean, like in our regional languages, there is something called as a saying, that if it is just because it's a golden sword, you can't slit your throat, right? You shouldn't. Because organization is also not going to benefit with a person who is not fully willingly contributing and participating, and helping organization grow. If you can't contribute, then there is no point, right? So it's important, irrespective of the generation, you understand that. And the hop, well, it might be true that you moved very quickly once, but the hopper, the tag is going to come mainly because of too many of them happening. So once bitten, twice shy. You should always, next one you should know how to understand the expectation from the job perspective, and even the first one can be avoided actually. There are ways of doing it, but if only you are very clear about what you want to be doing, right? So as student, if we know what is our aspiration and goal, as I said, only 20% unfortunately fall into that category. So 80% are not, and nothing wrong in that. That's then the attitude is very important, right? So not an issue.
Thank you. So moving on to the next question. So, sir, you are such a well-versed person in so many walks of life. You have mentored hundreds of students. So, what is one thing that you see lacking in freshers throughout the spectrum? Be it a high-performing academic person or a not so high-performing academic person. What is the one thing that you find lacking in this generation?
Okay, I think I see a lot of advantages of this generation. They have access to information like no other generation earlier had, and the digital connect that we are. These are all the advantages which is there, and that is also in a way a distraction, right? So um, can we concentrate? Can we take up something and take it to fruition, the completion? right? Those are the challenges with the younger generation, the newer generation, which is going to be getting into the workforce now, right? So and the companies would be, the talent is in abundance, but how do you channelize that? And the willingness that, that I want to achieve something and I want to contribute meaningfully, because we have, current generation is getting so tuned to very short term results, and it's all instant gratification, which is now, right? So we are not thinking much about the future too, where you shouldn't, it shouldn't bother you, but if we don't have some purpose and visibility and some goals, then we'll be part of somebody else's plan.
So, sir, I completely agree, and I appreciate that the answer that you gave. So, there's an old saying that too many chefs spoil the broth. So, with information coming from all sources at us, so it sometimes gets hard to figure out which source or which information to let it go through and which stuff to avoid. Thank you so much. So, the next question is during this placement season, so there is a lot of mental pressure, stress, peer pressure. Your friends are getting placed, you're not getting placed. So is there, how can one tackle that? How can one not let it hamper their performance in the interview?
Okay, interesting question. I think we should probably look at it. Well, stress, when does stress happen? Because of expectation,
Yes.
and the other is comparison. Okay, these are two deadly, two side of the sword, that either way it will cut you off, right? So you should be careful on how you handle these. And I think stress also comes with today, maybe people are just running after the success to them is getting placed, and what is the salary, right? That is what is determining the success. Unfortunate, it shouldn't be, right? So those are not necessarily the best parameters for you to determine, and the student should look at what is my life, what is my purpose, and and if you are studying management and if you're studying marketing as your specialty, here is an opportunity on how you differentiate, how you present, the way you dress, the way you introduce, the way and it should be your value proposition to the organization. If there is just because you did not get placed doesn't mean that you're bad. Here it should be, because you should understand, yes, you're bringing that value proposition, that right match is not happening. If we develop that approach and an attitude, I think it will be bindas, man. Good, go find something where there is a right match and where you are happy, they are happy for hiring, and then it's not as much as a stress, because you're very clear, right? And at the same time, opportunity to apply our learnings on marketing to make a difference and show how different we are and why me for this job, right? And in fact, I would not even attend an interview if the match isn't there, if I don't connect to that job description, or to the role, or to the organization, or to its values, and so on. So I wouldn't even want to. So some people, just because they are finding an opportunity to attend an interview, it's actually waste of time for the organization, and also waste of time for the institution which is organizing, coordinating, and because it's just not about being placed, it is about the right match also, right?
Yes.
So, and if you don't get that, it should not be a problem, right? So it's a matter of time and finding the right match. It's good if you don't find, rather than finding a job which you wouldn't enjoy and where you wouldn't be able to contribute, where you are not able to grow. Instead of that, not getting that job is much better, right? So, and both for organization and for you and the institution. So I would say it's an approach, and the stress can be managed, one with the right expectation, and the comparison needs to be parked, and the right matchmaking as an approach, and then bring that aspect of what am I giving, right? So if you know your value proposition, what you're giving, then it won't stress you. Okay, that's a technique or a secret, I would say. And the other level, taking it to the new level, is that, you know, with that attitude of I'm going to be adding a lot of value. So and it is the right match which will change the game for both the organization and to me in my life. All right, with that, I think it's going to make a huge difference in terms of how we handle stress. And it shouldn't be a stress. By the way, some amount of stress is good. That brings some growth, and that amount of if you ask even Virat Kohli, he would have played so many games, but when he has to get into the every match is a new match, right? And that little that fear or that stress would be there, and the better the player you are, the stress will be more because of the expectations and all that. But then you should learn how to handle it. For me, I've been a public speaker. I've been doing so many training programs now. Now, as an innovation coach, I'm a serial entrepreneur turned innovation coach. But every time I have to do a session, it's a new thing, new day, new members who are attending. So that stress would be there. But I'm aware that that is a good stress. I should enjoy that stress, respect that stress. Then we will experience growth. That is what I would wish that you all learn and demonstrate it, and it will bring you happiness and prosperity.
Thank you so much. So my next question is, for example, when a company comes to a college for placement, so each student in a college has their own unique set of strengths and things they are good at. Everyone has that. So, for a position for which 100 applicants are applying, so how can one stand out and capitalize on their strengths to gain an advantage, to stand out from the crowd?
Very good. There's no doubt that the best of us would come when we are able to play on our strengths, right? And that's again a secret. So if we know how many of them know their strengths, that's a big question. Again, 80% might not know, right? When it is somebody else's, we know how to do a SWOT analysis and all that, right? But when it comes to our own life, we wouldn't be knowing. So identifying our strengths here uh, and how to nurture that is very important, right? So we need to learn and maybe even take professional help if it is required. So one is identification of our strength, and we need to play on our strength. Even a little extra effort, and even the failures, if it is based on our strength, then I think it would not stress you out, right? So having talking to college, this is taking me back to my college days, and there was once in my college days where the sports meet was happening. So I was wanting to be in the sports team and athletic aspect, and I just went to this a pit where there was a long jump or track was there. So came running and just jumped, and there came a shout from my coach, "Hey Naveen, what are you doing?" So I was like, I got scared. I said, I don't know what I did, and did I crash somebody or did I do something wrong? So he said, "Come here." So I went there, and he said, "Are you a right-hander or a left-hander?" Very strict voice, and he was angry. I said, "I'm a right-hander, sir." In my mind, I was thinking, what am I got to do with the right hand or a left hand for a long jump? I'm not using my hands at all here. So then he said something very interesting. Okay, got me to think and inquire into a little more deeper later. That moment, I would not probably have understood as much, but over time, that wisdom and experience teaches you a lot. So here, he said wonderful secret that I got to know. If you're a right hander, that's your conscious hand, and conscious leg is your right leg. There's a lot of unused energy in your left leg because your left hand is not your conscious hand. So are you utilizing that? There's strength there. Are you utilizing it? So here, what I thought was a weakness is with the coach, there is a complete shift in the mindset and the aspect. And also, I understood why people need to take the count and then take a leap. One, because you avoid fouls because you have only three chances. The best of it is what is taken, and it will determine whether you cross the line or you don't, or you win or lose, and so on, right? So, after understanding the techniques, And while it was a raw, sheer energy that I came running and jumped, but with the technique and the based on my strengths and based on several conditions, right? And measuring that distance, which I had to do a run up to avoid foul and to take even few millimeters make sense. So how when you take all of that into consideration and do your work, I got a gold medal for that season, right? So, and that's the impact. And if we know how to play on our strengths, and you'll be a winner, be it in sports or be it in placements. So, it's about these techniques and learning and exercising them. You're all studying management and especially in marketing. And this one, now just imagine everybody else who's attending that interview are also management students and they're also marketing specialists. How do you still differentiate? How do you still show your value proposition? How do you still create an impression? And how do you still get them to feel, oh, you are the man. If we miss you, or you're the lady, if we miss you, we're going to miss something for our organization. That feeling has to come to them, right? That presence will have to make it happen. Easy to say, right? And I'm sure you would be thinking, yeah, it is easy to say because you crossed over this and you're on the other side. But I think it's probably one of the best practice that we practice, we can win. Yeah.
So, my next question, this is actually one of the most popular questions. Where to look for job opportunities?
Okay.
Because on people say ki you can look for referrals, you can look through LinkedIn, but all these efforts, and a lot of my friends have the same experience, all of these efforts feel like shooting arrows in the dark. There is no substantial quantifiable result that is coming out of it. So I want to understand, what are we doing wrong?
Okay. So you actually gave the answer. So I'm only re-emphasizing, or rather bringing that focus on that important statement that you made. Are we shooting arrows in the dark, right? So just imagine, this is now football season and World Cup happening. Just imagine that you are a player, you're on the field and with the ball with you. There's no goal post. What would happen? It looks like a comical show, or you're completely lost, you can't even move, right? So the best part here, if we can create that goal, that is where the purpose or the goal or aspiration of what you want to be becoming and your skills matching to that, these are the aspects. If we can start aligning, then the movement will come, then the acceleration. First comes the direction, then the acceleration, right? So now we are just want to move fast, but where to?
Right.
So no idea, right? And you don't get help also, right? Just imagine you going to a ticket counter and where you want to take a bus and travel somewhere, and you put your hand inside the counter and say, give me 2 tickets. And what's the first question that where to, right? Say, no, give me just 2 tickets, man. I just need a job, right? Give me, right? And then how do you think they can help? Can't. You don't get much results. So here, even placements of the job is of that kind. And some people are actually meant to be creating jobs, right? I'm interested even how they are unnecessarily getting into the stress of finding job. They should, if they are meant to be becoming entrepreneurs, they should not run for the placement thing. They should be actually thinking of an idea how they are going to be creating, a product or a service and a company and providing jobs. Right? Recently, I was doing one training program for a pre-incubation program in an educational institution. This is a tier 3 city, and these were management and engineering students. So this whole place where the training program is organized, it was pretty good, and the participation was very good from the students. And but there were a few people moving in and out. There were staff rooms around, and this place was little humid, so they turned the ACs and special fan also on so that I stay cool. But this fan was making some noise, and that air was also blowing into the mic, so it was more disturbance. At the tea break, I was telling, I think we should have had a better place for us to be conducting this kind of a training program, and the participation is so good, and here they are getting an opportunity for somebody like me coming and doing this training program, and this program was on idea generation and idea validation, right? So it's based on my book Found, which is a 4 international award-winning book. It's been ranked as the best book in entrepreneurship category in USA. And when this opportunity of learning is there, we are actually cutting it off through these environment, right? And they said, we had said, but we not anticipated these. And so during the lunch time, we were having private lunch with the principal and then the coordinator, and we were talking about, hey, how about a classroom? No, it's going to be humid. So several of these were not working, and we were ideating actually, right? And at that point in time, the coordinator said, "Sir, one place is there which checks all these boxes," and he said that's the boardroom. Okay, all the facilities that we're talking about is superb facilities, but it's the boardroom where students are not allowed there. I said, okay. I thought, when is academia is going to shift with its mindset and so on. So we were talking and deliberating, and the principal said, because there was one occasion where for one of the corporate companies, when we did a little extra training program of ours in a boardroom, and this was given by the board because they felt the corporate would need that kind of attention and importance for their key members in the organization to be a little extra. So when I was mentioning this, the principal said, I think the afternoon session should happen in the boardroom. So we shifted, and it happened there. So we asked the students, how's the experience there? From there and here, for the first time, you created history that, in the boardroom, in your university, that you're seated and this session is happening. You know what one student said? He said, sir, morning, wherever the session was happening, that was the placement office. Okay, and typically as students, we are all running for placement office, and that's usually in a rush, and we want good jobs, right? And afternoon, we are doing this session here in the boardroom where we are talking strategy for creating jobs. The placement officer was the first one to acknowledge. They said, wow, this is amazing. This is a big mind shift. And placement officer is now saying, I'll be very happy to come to my student who's become an entrepreneur and say, here is job opportunities that I want you to consider that for my students to come and join. Unfortunately, the way the metric is driven currently, it's all on placements and we are running. And if our dream is to become an entrepreneur and provide jobs and be a support to the placement office, rather than seeking jobs and running to the placement office to put pressure saying, I need to get a job. Nothing wrong in getting a job. But then if somebody is cut out for creating jobs, they should consider, right? And run after that dream and provide jobs to others. Nothing like it, right? So, yes.
So the next question is also one of the most demanded questions. So mostly in interviews, candidates are faced by this dreaded question, what are your greatest weaknesses?
Okay.
So people usually, what they do is they, one day before the interview, they'll just mug up the most diplomatic answer and they'll just blur it out in front of the panel. But the panel is also accustomed to it. They also know where the student has mugged it up from. So what would be a right and a genuine approach for this answer?
See, I think as much as students think they're very smart and they can cover it up, it over, the interviewer, the person is on the other side, also has gone through all of this in his life or in her life, and they're on the other side, right? So they can also see through or read through these. So the best is to be authentic. And a lot of this problem would be resolved if you do a SWOT analysis on your own self, which we don't, and expect the interview to happen very well, right? So first of all, as a person, irrespective for the placement, I need to understand what my strengths are, and I need to understand what my weakness is. And as human being, we all have weakness. So if at all the job opportunity, and that is there the O comes in, right? The opportunity in the SWOT: strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. So the the key to success is the alignment of opportunity to your strength, right? If that is happening, then you'll have a click. Unfortunately, we deal with the more of weakness and the opportunity alignment, then it's a failure. And the other side, the interviewer is interested to look at, what your weakness are. Is that getting aligned to the job opportunity and your traits, or is it the weakness, right? So it's good to be genuine, and it is good to be authentic there, but how you say. And if the job opportunity, this is where the maturity needs to come. We need to start understanding the alignment, our own self assessment for that job opportunity, and our strength and weakness. I would rather want to sit in that interviewee seat where my strengths are aligned to the opportunity, the job opportunity, right? Then to talk about my weakness is no big problem, right? But if I'm seated not knowing, and if my weakness is coming out to be more aligned with the job opportunity, and then we think bad luck, right? It is actually behind that there is some science. Yeah. And this reminds me of one of the situation in Silicon Valley in the US, where I used to be the vice president for global strategic initiatives. And once I was traveling there in San Jose, and my team, we wanted a vice president position to be filled. So there were many rounds of interviews, so many people who were interviewed, and finally there was two candidates, equal strengths, and skill wise they were equal, and it was hard for them to choose one. So unfortunately, I landed up in that place at that point in time, and they put that monkey onto my back, saying, "Hey, you need to pick one of these, right?" But the and when I had an interview, had one conversation with both of them individually, well, I think the it was not an easy thing, because the skill wise they both were very very good and equal. And when they left, the interview happened, and then I chose the person A and the person B, right? Two of them. So person A, and then they asked, why? How did you choose? I said, you guys shouldn't blame me for choosing, because pretty strange reason, right? And they asked, like, they were more interested to know. I said, first guy who came after all our conversation, he pushed his chair back, and the other guy just stood up and left. So I chose the person one. And they were all wondering, are you crazy? Somebody just pushed the chair back, so you chose him, and as against the other person just didn't push the chair back. How could that be a determining factor? I said, yeah, this is a leadership position. His people, his resources, his organization, the small things matter, right? How you treat your resources, how you treat your people, what is your attitude. This was a question, he would have answered very well verbally. But I'm not interested in, just because you already validated both of them technically. So my interest is their attitude. And that little act of pushing the chair back can find a job at a vice president level, right? And somebody who just didn't push the chair back lost the position, right? So, I mean, this is not written in books, but that's life. Because to me, I think it fortunately worked out well. That guy really took care of his people and the resources, respect for the company, and he earned a lot of respect in the process. So it worked well. Fortunate that it was a good match. Yes.
Thank you so much for your answer, sir. It was indeed very insightful. For the next question, again, I'd like to mention an old saying that man often meets his destiny by the paths he takes to avoid it.
Okay.
So, after being rejected multiple times, when someone has lost all hope and everything happens, so what is something that we can do to rebound? It is very easy to say that rebounding is what matters, falling doesn't matter. But what is the courage and what are the steps that we should take to have a rebound?
I think this is a pretty common situation, right? Again, uh, this is also our conditioning. The way, even in our academia, the way the system is, that we are taught only to succeed or pass, right? And we don't know how to handle failure. So when we took up entrepreneurial journeys to build companies, only then we realized failure is a part and parcel of. They say failure is a stepping stone to success, but we well, that is true, but we don't know how to deal with it. Okay, so it's important that we understand failure is a part and parcel of anything which is an important good game to play, and the many ways of dealing with it if we want to learn, right? So one is, if we play sport, any sport, so the the ability to handle failure would be much better, right? The second is the learning. Rather than the focus on the failure, it is the learning should be the main approach, right? What did I learn? So every interview that I would have attended, if I can learn something, that's the progress, as against treating that as failure. And the third aspect is, I would even say, how you treat failure. It is not that you failed. This initiative or this particular interview failed. That's all. It's not you who failed. It's important that to disassociate the failure with you, right? That's an event or an activity which happened. Well, you are also associated with it, but it is not you who failed. And how do we increase the success rate? I think we spoke about it, right? One method is to have a purpose. Then, um, when Thomas Alva Edison was asked, you failed 10,000 times, and he said, no, I only figured out 9,999 ways of how not to invent a bomb. So he treated that not as a failure, but because he had a strong purpose, the failure was just an attempt. It was like, try, but there was some new learning out of it, and he was able to use it, right, in his life. So that can be reduced if you have one as a purpose or a goal, and the pre-work, right, before you really go even for that interview, how much of knowledge you have about them, right? And not giving up that attitude of, I want to achieve this, right? So this again goes back to one of my early days of job, when I was wanting, after my engineering, studying engineering, I, like any other friends of mine, wanted to go abroad, study, and so on. But I was also continuing to do parallelly computers, some languages that I was learning on computer language. And that time, I happened to see one book with the title "Tough Times Never Last, but Tough People Do." Okay, Robert H. Schuller's. The title interested me so much that I picked that book. And when I was reading, suddenly I remembered that morning in the newspaper I had seen one ad for a placement, right, in a job. Don't know, that was for a sales job. And I wanted to do in research and wanted to actually go and into software development and those kind. But this was a sales job. So I thought something said in me that I should try for this job. So I dressed up, wore a tie, wore a jacket, went there. The job interview, the queue was some 600 people, walk-in interview, lined up on the street to get inside. I said, I thought, done engineering and all that, and if I see hundreds of them lined up in the queue, I was so disgusted about the situation, but went on. Anyway, I've come, let me. So went, attended interview after rounds, like almost 12 days, 13 days, 14 days over, and interviews still, shortlisting happening. And at home they asked me, are you going for an interview or a job? Looks like every day you're going for an interview. And I said, and one day I was like almost saying, enough of this, man. It's not working out. And I said, let me not go. Again, that feeling was, today, anyway, after so many rounds, today let me just go. So I went. Good, I went because there were 4 positions and 600 people in the queue. Then, after 14 days or 15 days, the shortlisting had happened. And there were 8 people in the last day of that interview. And the last day, where I was in doubt, should I go or not? But I took a chance of going. Only 4 people turned up, including me. And that day, there was no interview, was only to see your persistence, your aspiration, and your interest in that job. So just because I went that day, got a job, right? So that completely changed my approach towards handling this pressure, the stress. Now I said, wow, there's a science. They were actually doing a stress test, and they were actually wanting to see our attitude, and all of these. So this is one where I got a success. Okay, the other one, my very first interview, I'll never forget this in my life. I wanted to do a research and technology side and so on. So got a reference to Mr. S.A. Chandran of S.A. group of companies, and he's the chairman. And got a chance. I was a referee. It was a reference, so otherwise I wouldn't meet a chairman. So met him, and he said, "Oh, nice, good to know. And what do you want to do?" I said, "Research," and like proudly I was saying, "This is what I want to do," and all that. He said, "Why don't you sit down?" And I sat down, and he gave me a card. He pulled out one card which was there. Some write-up was there. And he said, "Can you do one thing for me?" I said, "Yes, sir." "Can you count number of T's in that, the letter T in that whole phrase or a paragraph?" I had to count. I said, "Man, okay, what's the big deal?" So I counted, said a number. I said, "Is that so? Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, very sure." I said, "Do you want to count again?" The way he asked, I counted again, found a different number. Then I said, "Whatever is the number of T's." He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Sir, yes, I think I'm sure." "Do you want to count again?" I counted again, found another different number. I said, "Man, and I did." He made me do almost 7 times or 10 times. And all 10 times I got different numbers. Then I said, "Man, I want to do research, and here, after engineering, am I not able to count the number of T's? And this was my first interview in my life. Got shook up. But at the same time, good, I got shook up at that point in time. Very first one. Learned a lesson. I can't take anything lightly, and can't just say, because I'm so and so, I've studied so and so, I've scored so and so, no big deal. Life will give you a test of that kind which will ground you. The earlier that we get grounded, the better it is. And I'm actually, if we can learn from our failures from these interviews, that would be a lot more valuable in our life and for our growth than somebody who did a killing out of the very first interview and got a great job and great package. Caution, don't be complacent and let your overconfidence not crush your career. That would be my message, right? And wishing the very best for people who are attempting to, for interviews and for placement. Yes, this is just a milestone in your journey. There's a long way to go, way ahead. You have to enjoy the journey, right? And in innovation, entrepreneurship, or even becoming an intrapreneur, right? So you will have to have that talent and the innovation, that mindset, which I think corporates are looking for. That would be another message, that you carry that, and try to be innovative, so that you are able to demonstrate, and that is what corporates are looking for. And they are not asking for it, hence you're not preparing for it. But if you really want a killing, you innovate, go there and show, and they should feel, I want this person in our organization, right? Make it happen, right? So
Yes, it was indeed a pleasure for me also speaking to you, listening to your insights. It was a great experience for all of us present here. And I would like to thank you again for blessing us with your presence.
Thank you so much. And best wishes
Most
to all of the students who are at that juncture that you want to, have your dream job, right? And but also an appeal for those to be a little extra and also create jobs, and innovate. So this is the opportunity.
Thank you so much.